Yeah, but.
And that was a part of that
we
Eagle Scouts
We walk through there
project.
quite often with the dog coming over this way. In the past year though, the names have started eroding very quickly. I mean, there's one Confederate soldier out there. He died in the early 1900s, but his rank and you know, everything.
That's
is
Mr. Ailes, I think.
And there's a really beautiful four-sided one that has a whole family on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right at the edge of the woods.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's
And you
kind
can
of-
barely read it now. Last year you could read it really well, now you can't.
Well, when we were little playing in there were a lot of stones.
Mhm.
Now, do you have those stones on your list? The ones that are, all the
Everything
ones
that's
that
in
are
the
still in the
cemetery,
cemetery?
everything that was taken from the cemetery that was returned, but then, you know, perhaps there were ones that were taken that weren't returned. So it's a very incomplete list. And even Hauberg's interview with David Sears in 1918. I mean, if I look on this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, yeah, they only talk about 18 burials out there. So that's very incomplete also.
Is there a chance you could ever come upon any other descendants, and if someone has an unusual name that you maybe could talk?
Sure, I suppose that would be it.
It might be a long, hard
You
struggle.
go on Ancestry.com and look up some of those names in the 1900 census, the 1890 census, the 1880 census, and you could,
There is no 1890 census.
well,
There isn't?
It burned. It was national, I think, and the building burned down.
I didn't know that.
So there's a whole 10 years there was lost.
Oh. Yeah, so it's really a 20-year, because it goes from 80 to
80 to 100.
100.
that'd be interesting.
Any other questions?
I didn't even know that cemetery existed.
Well, thank
Well,
you.
if it wasn't dark, we could walk over there, but as I say, the burials, I'm sure, extend into the woods, and then north along some area that's.
Where was the Indian trail you talked about? Was that little street behind 14th Street that comes right out over
Okay,
here?
and here again, there are conflicting accounts. Hauberg states that the Indian Trail went along the north boundary, which would have been Rodman's line, which would be 42nd Avenue. And then in another description that I came across, it said it formed the eastern boundary of the cemetery.
So is that trail that you can still see right up?
Still, right,
around the corner?
uh-huh.
I don't
And when I
remember.
first came here, and I could never see it, but I remember Neil, if you guys remember Neil Rangan, who was site manager here like forever, taking me right to where the trail, you know, if you hike back, I'm sorry, I should turn my back to you, but if you're hiking back from Singing Bird and you just keep going straight and then you get to where the trail curves to the north, or you can go off, or excuse me, to the east. I am from Ohio. The Mississippi River runs in the wrong direction. I can never, ever, I can't get used to it. I just.
This is the only place in the United States where it runs east and
And you know
west.
what? I have to go north to get to Iowa. I can't do it. I
Just
can't.
can't deal with it.
I just can't wrap my
You
brain
don't wanna
around
go
it.
to Iowa anymore.
Oh.
Not only
It really
that,
does. It messes up my.
there are parts of Illinois that are west of Davenport. As you go down towards Muscatine, all of that's west of Davenport.
One
And
you're talking
anyway,
about, go
right,
across the
so-
bridge and then it
Right,
splits
so
just
it
on the other
goes off
side.
to the right,
Okay.
so that's to the east.
All right.
And then you can also go off to the left and then come out at the dead end of 42nd Avenue.
Okay.
And that's where I was told you could see, and Neil stood there and said, there it is, and I'm like, okay. But
That's
then
not
that's where
40
you could pick up this Indian trail that, yeah, you
It
have
does,
just
yeah.
the little bit,
No,
kind of just on the,
It's
South
43rd
side.
Avenue. Because it seems almost like that could be the Indian Trail because it dead ends at the park and it picks up that trail that comes right out here by Singing Bird.
I thought that was 42nd Avenue.
It's 43rd.
Well, there's a dead end at 42nd also.
43rd.
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah, a dead end at 42nd
43rd
because
is
it
this
butts
one
up
right
to the
out
park.
here, it's the south border
Yeah.
of the
I think it
cemetery.
is 42nd. No, it's
42nd is by the water tower,
Right.
and
Yeah.
The one
that is a
before,
dead
the one
end.
before
It's like a half
42nd,
street.
the one I'm thinking
That's
of.
43rd, and that's right, right over there.
No, 44th
Comes
is,
around and, you know, comes
44th comes out at the,
we're on 44th,
Yeah.
goes behind Drake's house and.
between 43rd
But it comes right into this
and
path.
But Mickey, the cemetery road is on
The doctor and his
43rd,
wife live in that
as
big
you
red
come up the hill.
house.
Yeah. Oh, they used to.
Anna, and I can't think of his name.
Dr. Fields?
Yes, the Fields live in that big red house, and that's the dead end I'm talking about, whatever avenue
That's
that is. I
42nd.
thought that was 42nd, but.
Yeah, it is 42nd.
Yeah, and that's where I was shown and told that you could still see the trace of the Indian Trail. So if that's the case, then that would mean that that Indian Trail did indeed run along the east end of
Of the cemetery.
the cemetery, rather than being Rodman's line, which, I mean, it is right there in the legal description. It says, you know, it goes 269 and a half feet along Rodman's line, being the southern border of the land that was purchased by Colonel Thomas Rodman. And then it's like 250 feet on each side long, and then the 269.
there is no 43rd Avenue.
Well, but
It's
there
where
is,
it would be. By the park, you know.
Yeah.
Right, and it does have a street sign that says 43rd Avenue, even though
About
it's
50 foot long.
more
Yeah.
like a,
It's one of the reasons why
Alley,
you get the
but-
road in this alley, because it kind
gravel
of
thing.
continues.
but that's one of the reasons I wanna check that out, because that's what I was thinking, is that's all alley, where the heck is 43rd Avenue? But as I said, a neighbor on the south side of that found a gravestone in his backyard, buried under the earth, so.
Yeah, our address is 4350.
It seems like to find the plausible location of this Indian trail, it might be helpful to know where the Indians were going.
Well, and
Wherever they wound up going, that's probably where the trail ends.
Weren't they going to
They
Michigan?
said that, and this is from Hauberg's notes, and he got this from Mr. Brasher. Now, it wouldn't have been the original Brasher, I'm sure, that came here in 1829, but it would have been, you know, like David Sears, who was 83 in 1918. I think Mr. Brasher was 83 in 1918 also. And what he said was that that trail originated from Saukenuk, and one branch of it went up to the Watchtower, you know, which they say, I guess, is on the earliest plat maps, that's where the lodge is located, though I really think it's a little bit further that way. And then the other went to 24th Street, but not that way to 24th Street, kind of along the brow of the ridge to about, you know, where 24th Street, like where it comes into the district down there, to Mesquacanuk, to Wapalasstown. Wapalasstown was between about 15th and 20th Avenues or streets, I don't know, streets, see, I can't get streets and avenues straight either, for 30 years, I can't do it, because the river goes in the wrong direction. Okay? But you see, that doesn't help me, because west is the river, right? No, I have to go north to get to the river, but anyway, but that would have been the trail that connected Saukenuk to Wapalasstown.
What is Wapalasstown? What is that?
That was a Meskwaki town.
Oh.
What are the boundaries of the Saukenuk town area? What,
Well, that's in dispute also. John Hauberg says that 12th Street and 45th Avenue was the heart of the village. Though by 1831, when there was just Black Hawk's band and then some other Kickapoo and some other nations that had come to live with him that summer, the army brought their steamboat up the Rock River and said that the houses were within 50 yards of the river. And that Rhino Wells, who I think his house was down near about the Moose Lodge, am I right there? Sure, okay, I am. That his house was 100 yards from Black Hawk's. So we don't know if, you know, by that time they had withdrawn into just a portion of their town. We know that there was a house located where Sherry Dees is now, because when that was being, excavated back in the sixties. It was originally a gasoline station. Farrell Anderson, local archaeologist, saw in the excavations some food storage pits with the stored food still in them, which the Indians would dry the food and then cache it. And since the food was cached inside their houses, under their beds, we know for certain, I mean, that was one place that we could hang our hat on. We know there was a house there, which would have been right across the street from where Mr. Dickson was living, because he was at 12th Street and 46th Avenue. Well, it's just right across the street.
It's what where Feasters is, isn't it?
Pardon?
Isn't it near, right by Feasters? Where Feasters is located?
Right
The
about
the
there.
appliance store?
Yeah, yep.
That's where it's Dixon's, and the storage shed thing, you can see there's the driveway, it's kind of a steep hill, and I think that's where he was talking about, where he had seen where they had excavated, and you can see the storage stuff in there.
No, it's down where Sherry D's is.
I know, it's in Sherry D's,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
in
yeah.
Sherry D's
Sherry
parking lot,
D's.
but there's kind of a
Right.
steep
It's a
hill.
car lot.
Okay,
And
it's
the
a driveway.
driveways, and
Yeah.
you can just see that would have to be where it was.
Yeah. So in our recreation of the city of Saukenock, we take it quite a bit south and then towards the river and not too much north of probably about 42nd Avenue, maybe 40th Avenue. We take it about that far north in our recreation. But there was no documentation from the time, which we found very frustrating. I mean, here you have the largest city in the state of Illinois, 5,000 people living in the city of Saukenock down there in 1822. They know that the Sauk are not friendly to the Americans. They never healed the breach from the War of 1812 and before, really going back to the Treaty of 1804, that they wouldn't have sent someone out here to map it out just strategically so that you'd know, but maybe it's buried in somebody's attic. We teased the man that did the model and said, just put it on Velcro. So what's that map? We know it's out there. Once we find it, we can move the houses accordingly and get it. We know the location of the council house. John Hauberg located that, and that's where that substation is, right before you cross Rock River. We know where the council house was. We know that there were burials on either side of the council house. We know that there were burials up in the hills.
Substation before you cross the Rock River.
Right.
Down on like 11th Street area.
On 11th Street, you see, there was a description of Saukenock, very detailed, that was written in 1881 or 1882, 1884, I don't know, by Armstrong, I think is who wrote that. And supposedly his informant was Bailey Davenport, who said as a child he would often go play at Saukenock. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But even then it would have been 55 years after the Indians had gone. But that was the best description that we had. And so we used that description, plus another few words that you got here and there in Judge Spencer's reminiscences, plus using the topography. The town can't go east of 12th Street because then your houses are gonna be like that. So just using the topography, springs, nobody's, where the spring drains down, nobody's gonna build their house on a, swampy land. And then the one house that we knew and where the council lodge was, and just little snippets that we got from that 1831 description, just did the best we could. Putting it together.
Do you know when the first newspaper was printed around here?
Whoo, I do not. First newspaper in Rock Island County?
But
Do
I
not.
looked and I go, I thought maybe the time was kind of like that my little
They're down in the library. They've got microfilms of all the old newspapers before the Argus.
Well, and Saukenock was destroyed when the militia came in June 25th, June 26th, 1831. Black Hawk had fled the night before, and they burned it to the ground and dug up a number of burials and took the human remains and burned them too. So it was destroyed.